Yeah. Sometimes I get so mad, there's no controlling me. My thoughts get so bad, I'm like, I might grab a bat, I don't know. My wrath, my blood boils over like, oh God, here goes. I lost all feeling from my head to my toes. You said some shit that I can't let go, so just stay tuned for the rest of the show. So have you ever felt betrayed? Switches how you see things, realize something needs change. Cause I know you got me fucked up, let me show you what's up. Cause enough is enough. I'll take a face full of pavement just to make a statement. I know there's no turning back. Oh God, adrenaline wasted, so mad I can taste it. I know there's no turning back. I'll do what it takes, I ain't making mistakes like that. I'll play it on your face to make you go take it.
Hello, everyone. Happy Easter. I hope you had a great day. It is cold and rainy here, and that means that I'm in pain, but it's Easter. Jesus has arisen, and he forgives us for all of our sins. Hello, Jeff. Hello, Richie. Hello, Kaz. Hello, Jules. How is everyone doing? Tomorrow starts Chad Daybell, the day we've all been waiting for. Well, I know I have been waiting for, and Kaz has been waiting for. 70 and when is it raining? You're in California, right? Yeah. It's cold, windy, and rainy here. So perfect Easter egg hunting weather, right? No, you don't live in California? Are you in Arizona? Oh, New Mexico. I knew you were somewhere around here. Back to Mr. Chad Daybell. It is his turn. Yes, it is his turn. And I cannot wait for this trial, you guys. It is going to be epic, as Pryor is defending Chad on his own. He is working solo on this whole trial. Hey, Ryan. And yeah, we already know how he is. So yeah, it starts tomorrow. We're going to listen to Vinny as he tells us how it all began to where we are now. Hello, SWTC. How are you? But first, talking about Pryor, he goes and does an interview on the news the other day, like recently. So Judge Boyce had to put a gag order so that he couldn't talk because, hello, what are you doing? Really? Let's listen to what he had to say.
Well, welcome back to Court TV Live. The murder trial for Chad Daybell is beginning next week with jury selection. And ahead of his trial, Daybell has been moved from eastern Idaho to the Ada County Jail. He's accused of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and several deaths. The deaths of his wife, Tammy Daybell, and for Lori Daybell's children, JJ and Tylee Ryan.
Scripps News Boise reporter Don Nelson spoke with Chad's attorney, one of my favorite, John Pryor. I'll tell you what, this case is going to be fascinating because of John Pryor. He is an advocate.
And the cameras that will allow us to see his advocacy on display.
It is going to be a lot different than Lori's trial. But he talked to John Pryor, and here is what John Pryor said about the upcoming trial.
Attorney John Pryor has been working on the Chad Daybell case for almost 4 years. And you might wonder how Pryor was thrust into the national spotlight.
All I can say is that he reached out to me. That's how it started. And at this point, we're going and he wants to tell his story.
That story will start next week with jury selection in a trial that's expected to last anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks. And if you think Pryor has assembled a team...
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate that. Happy Easter. Thank you.
To take on this high-profile case, think again.
Well, unfortunately, Don, I'm doing this myself, so that makes things a little challenging. But fortunately, I've had about 3 years and 10 months to go through all the evidence, to sort of look at what I want to present to the jury, and I'm looking forward to my opportunity to do that.
I asked Pryor, who attended Lori Vallow Daybell's trial on a regular basis, if he learned anything that he could use in Chad Daybell's case.
Did I learn a lot of new things? Oh, absolutely. Did I see what the prosecutor intends to do? Yes. Was it a surprise? No.
I was also curious whether Lori could be called to the stand.
It's possible. It's always possible. Anybody who's connected to a case could be called. And I don't want to and I want to be.
Do y'all think that they're going to put Lori Vallow on that stand? I don't think so. It's a possibility, like he says, but I don't think so, in my opinion.
Clear. I'm not telling you that I am or that the state is or anybody else is, okay. But anybody could be called. If you have an involvement in this case, potentially you could become a witness in this case.
The trial hasn't started yet, but John Pryor is grateful for one thing.
I'm grateful that Judge Boyce decided to move the trial over to Ada County. One of the main reasons I'm grateful is I know the folks in Ada County. I've spent better than half my life living here.
And for the next few months, most of that time will be spent at the Ada County Courthouse.
Chad's wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, of course, is currently serving a life sentence for these murders. She went through this same courthouse, found guilty. Later this year, she'll be on trial in Arizona for the murder of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow.
Now, Court TV's Julie Grant spoke with Lori's brother, Adam Cox, on opening statements this morning about these trials and how they're impacting their family. Take a listen.
It's been it's unbelievable what happened. Like, it's something that you just never think would ever happen to your family. And then it happens, and you see people on TV talk about this all the time. I just never thought that would happen to my family. And I just never even came close to thinking anything like this would happen. So it's really hard to figure out how to process it, how it's been 4 years and I'm still trying to process it and try to heal from it, make sense of it. And so it's definitely a difficult life experience.
I'm sure.
With Lori, obviously Lori was a different person, but this wasn't an overnight thing. We talk about this in one of my podcasts that, it wasn't just one day she snapped. I think this was maybe 2 or 3 years of her going down a path. And then when she met Chad, it's like putting gas on the fire. But as far as delusional goes, I remember being at her house, and we have family gatherings at her and Charles's house all the time. And, she had been going down this path of, talking about the end of the world and things like that. So when we were talking in the kitchen, she had mentioned that she's transitioning into a translated being, immortal being. That she didn't have to eat anymore, and if somebody shot her with a gun, the bullet wouldn't affect her. So when she was saying stuff like that, I just looked at her and I said, well, Lori, I'm that's not true. And she said, you think I'm crazy, don't you? And I was like, I don't know if you're crazy or not. I just know that what you're telling me is not true. And that literally was the last conversation we had.
Insight there from brother of Lori Vallow Daybell. Let's bring back in criminal defense attorney, former district attorney Matthew Mann.
I just wanted y'all to hear Don Pryor. Something else. I have to rewind because y'all know that I'm always watching this stuff. Okay. Hello, everyone. Oh, please hit that like button for me. I would appreciate it. These links will be in the description for you guys to watch. And here we go. The story of Chad Daybell and why he is where he is today.
Disappear, only to be found dead months later in the prophet's backyard. Meanwhile, the prophet's wife dies in 17 days. Days later, Lori marries the prophet. Then when the brother collapses on the toilet and later dies, no one would believe the story. But a jury of 12 did and convicted Lori Daybell. Now it's time for the prophet, Chad Daybell, to face a jury. Tonight, we'll take a close look at his religious beliefs and how they seemingly changed his life. We'll also examine his life and relationship with his first wife, Tammy, the woman he's accused of murdering, as we investigate the doomsday couple, Lori and Chad Daybell.
I'm Vinny Politan. Get ready. This trial's happening on Monday, right here on your front row seat to justice. It all begins. Let's go back to how this all began, how it all started, when a little boy went missing and had a grandma and a grandpa who wanted to speak to him. He was out in Idaho, they're in Louisiana. They want to FaceTime, they want to speak, but mom is very elusive about where he is. And finally, it reached the point where they're like, something's got to be done here. Where's our grandson, JJ? And that's when investigators were contacted, and that's when this all started. In the end, 3 victims that lost their lives in all of this. JJ was one of them, his sister Tylee, and Tammy Daybell, who was the first wife of Lori's next husband. So it's all connected here. There's obvious tentacles and connections to all of this. Lori's been convicted. But what about this relationship and what was it about? This has been a big part of the mystery here, is exactly like this dynamic between Lori and Chad. What was their relationship about? Was it about love? Was it about passion? Was it about religion? Because in the end, it's this relationship that leads to all these people dying. She's been convicted already. He's going to be facing a trial beginning on Monday. But it's what's going on between these two. But there was a life for Chad before Lori. It's Tammy. Tammy. Yeah, this is the one who married him not as a prophet, married him not as an author, married him not as someone who was like leading people. No, married him, he was a gravedigger, just a regular gravedigger. And she had children with him, and they raised these children into adults. Like, this is what you do. This is like part of regular life. That you meet someone that you want to share this life with. And part of sharing that life is being there for each other, helping each other, protecting each other, and raising a family. And, from the outside, you would think that's exactly what was going on here. But something absolutely changed. And you try to understand what was it that changed. Well, Lori came into the picture, but before Lori came into the picture, like, what brought her into the picture? And it seemed like it was absolutely connected to Chad's beliefs and his writings and his so-called prophecies. And she became enamored with them. And that's what destroyed this life that should have been a great life. A great life for Tammy. Should have been a great life for Chad, too. You marry a woman who she's not looking to marry some celebrity or some prophet or someone that people are listening. No, just a regular guy. They fall in love. But that's not how this story ended. Matt Johnson, Court TV crime and justice correspondent, takes a look tonight at Chad's religious beliefs.
He had sold his soul. He had made his choice.
I think he meant to do good. Somewhere along the way, something's changed.
Those who knew Chad Daybell say he began his ministry with pure intentions.
I would say he has spiritual gifts and abilities. I've seen them in action in very personal situations, and I felt their genuineness in sort of a profound way.
Like Daybell, Eric Smith was raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, known to outsiders as the Mormon Church.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as the name indicates, believes that we are living in a particular moment in the world's history when God will return again, and that people need to prepare for that return.
The two shared beliefs that challenged LDS doctrine, including theories about the end of the world and reincarnation, beliefs that Smith said led to his excommunication from the church.
That was what brought us together. And so this idea of wanting to warn and help spread that message.
Now Smith sees his old friend in a far more sinister light.
When someone is gifted or has that ability to discern messages from heaven, I think they are equally as open to messages from darkness.
Chad Daybell was arrested on June 9, 2020, after human remains were found on his East Idaho property. They were the remains of 16-year-old Tylee Ryan and 7-year-old JJ Vallow. The children were missing for just a few weeks when Chad married their mother, Lori Vallow.
You know, I feel like he lived this double life.
Court records contain shocking revelations about the couple's alleged religious beliefs. According to a probable cause affidavit, the couple claimed to belong to the Church of the Firstborn. Their mission in the church was to lead the 144,000 during end times and to rid the world of zombies. The allegations raised questions about where those beliefs came from.
As for the notion of ridding the world of evil people, that's not the object in Latter-day Saint theology of what you do before Jesus comes.
The Church of the Firstborn exists within the LDS, but Mormon studies professor Kathleen Flake says she's never heard of zombies in LDS doctrine.
If there's anything that lends itself within the mainstream or even within the doctrines of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's probably the sense of immediacy they have about the last days.
Eric Smith isn't the only one with second thoughts about Daybell.
I'd like people to understand that his message is very different from the message I share in my podcasts, my blogs.
Smith met Daybell through author Julie Rowe, an energy practitioner who was also excommunicated from the church. The Daybells published Rowe's books through their imprint, the Spring Creek Book Company.
There was something about his energy that always kind of like bugged me, but I would look past it because I was picking up on his potential and that he had like a pretty good heart.
But in March of 2019, Rose says she cut ties with Chad after a series of red flags, including visions of him with Lori Vallow and others.
It was very clear to me that not only was he not going to apologize to me or admit that he was having an affair with Lori or anybody else. I think initially they thought they were light and they were deceived.
All right, let's bring in our guests. Joining me tonight, Lori Vallow, Daybell's uncle, Rex Connor is with us. In Salt Lake City, Utah, host of the Mormon Stories podcast, John DeLynn. And in Salt Lake City, retired police commander, religious cult expert, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Great to see you all. Rex, let me begin with you. This Church of the Firstborn, zombies. Did you hear any of this stuff from Lori at all during her life? Was this something that maybe was sort of simmering with her, or was this something that really became part of her life when she started following Chad Daybell?
No, it started before she was with Chad. She didn't talk with me directly about it. She talked with Adam, her brother, the co-host of our Silver Linings podcast. And he didn't bite, and so she cut him off. That was the last time that he talked to her. And she didn't use that terminology because that's a little deeper into the rabbit hole, I think, for her. But he cut it off quickly. Now, her brother Alex, my other nephew, he bought in at some point just whole hog. And and went all in with her.
John DeLynn, it seems that Chad was involved in a group or started one way, gets excommunicated, and then things start to get even more extreme once he is tossed out of the LDS church.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what date, where in the timeline he was excommunicated. My understanding is that both he and Lori were excommunicated way later than they should have been. And I think you highlight something really, really crucial. These sort of prepper Mormons, and they're all over Utah, Idaho, and Arizona. The Mormon Church has known about them for not just years, but decades. And the Mormon Church is terrified generally to excommunicate these people. And so I believe that in some sense, the church has some responsibility in these sorts of things getting way out of control, because I think the church is terrified to clamp down on what to many might believe is some of their core constituency, especially in places like Arizona, Idaho, and Utah.
Mike King, how do you see this issue where, you know, he starts at, they're members of the LDS, and then they get excommunicated at some point, but the beliefs, the zombies, seem to be off the rails? I think you're muted, Mike. You have a little mute button? Go ahead, you could hit it.
Let's see, how about that?
That's perfect.
Okay, sorry about that. The thing that's always troubled me about this is sometimes we want to put them into a real easy to define bucket, because this is such bizarre behavior for us to try to wrap our minds around. And so I go back to kind of the things I learned early on when we ran the Ritual Crime Task Force for the Attorney General. And the main thing that we learned, Vinny, was that usually it's more important to focus on the predatory behaviors that are exhibited and try to figure out that based on what someone's ideology is, what someone's background is, if they're using those kinds of things that they might have learned in attending some worship service somewhere as a youth or throughout their life, or the way in which they pray, that they use that and they start to twist it and they mingle it with philosophy and everything else to come up with something that seems pretty believable. Because for the people that are coming in and looking at these cult leaders, they're looking and listening to people that are kind of talking about scripture that sounds familiar, but then they're coming up with these wacky ideas like zombies and other kinds of things that are just so far out there. But the individual who's coming in and trying to mature into the group or the cult, thinking that they themselves are going to end up with some kind of special dispensation in life, they don't have the courage to stand up and say, that's a goofy belief system you've got there. And so they get sucked into it.
Now, Chad Daybell is also writing a bunch of books, and we saw that in Matt's piece. Here's a dramatic reading of one piece of one of the books. This one is called Chasing Paradise. Chad Daybell wrote all the words. We're just reading them.
Isn't there ever a time we're allowed to contact our loved ones? Tina asked. Can I ever talk to Kim? She's really my only hope of ever being allowed into paradise. Lucille smiled kindly. Heavenly Father's kingdom is a place of order, and contact between the different spheres is purposely limited. She motioned back toward the rampaging spirits. Those people have rejected the gospel plan and no longer follow the laws of heaven, so they can do whatever they want, haunt houses, fight each other, or whatever. But those who follow the Savior obey his laws. Righteous spirits don't contact mortals or alter the mortal world in any way, unless they are instructed to or receive special permission, Lucille said. There are different levels, even in spirit prison.
Spirit prison.
And we know about these levels. There was an email from Chad to Lori. This is in October of 2018, kind of giving the rankings of people, whether they're in the lightness or in the darkness. Alex Cox, 2L. Lori, 4.3L. Colby Ryan, one of her other children, 3L. Tylee, 4.1D. She's in the darkness. The zombies have her. Charles Vallow was a 3L. And little JJ, a 4.2L, before, according to Lori, the zombies got him. Rex Connor, let me ask you, these books seem to have a huge impact on your niece, Lori Daybell.
Apparently they did. I haven't read any of the books myself, but when she started into it, she started with another book that everyone familiar with the case has heard of, and the name escapes me. I haven't read that one myself either. John has done some great deep dives into it. Visions of Glory is the name of the book. But she bought into this. She is intrigued by all of this writing, by the second coming. And there are people that are intrigued by that. It's not mainstream church doctrine, but they get into it and make of it what they will as a hobby or their own belief system.
Speaking of Visions of Glory, I believe that's what she was reading poolside in Hawaii when she got served with papers in her bikini. Unbelievable. Can't make it up. Can't make it up. 144,000. I don't even know if you can fit them on that by the pool there. John DeLynn, thinking about what Chad was doing here, and I always come back to this question, like, was he a believer of his own stuff? Or was he, kind of like trying to sell something so people will pay attention to him? Maybe buy a book, show up at a seminar, maybe flash some googly blue eyes at him.
What's really tricky that people need to understand, I think, is that while an Orthodox Mormon might be able to say that Chad and Lori were fringe, that's not getting the full picture. We just learned that Visions of Glory was the #1 selling nonfiction book in Utah for 2023. And I have some citations for that. If you look at their beliefs in evil spirits that possess our bodies, belief in a second coming, belief in the prophecies of Isaiah that a one mighty and strong is going to emerge to usher in the second coming, the teachings of blood atonement, the teachings of polygamy, those are all the 144,000 in the book of Revelations. Those are all core Mormon doctrines that I was certainly taught throughout my.
I just want to make sure everyone knows these are religious beliefs of Chad Daybell and Lori Daybell, not of mine.
My entire upbringing. Now, think of those as Legos. It's true that Chad and Lori may have assembled those Legos into their own formations, the light and the dark and the zombie. But what we would be, it would be unfortunate if we missed the main point, which is that they're building with the core building blocks of Mormonism and to some extent, biblical Christianity. And so they were sincere believers, I think. If you look at Lori Vallow's some of her testimonies in court, it seems very clear that she believed firmly that Jesus was going to rescue her any day.
All right, everyone stay where you are. We got to get a quick break in here. When we come back, we'll bring back everyone. They know a lot. That's why we bring them on the show. We're going to talk about Chad and Tammy and their family, plus coming up next hour.
Chad's facing the death penalty. If he's found guilty of these charges, do you think that he will get the death penalty? And don't forget that there is the firing squad back in Idaho. They brought the firing squad back. I don't know, y'all. P. Diddy's in some mess. Not getting into all of that. And we're back.
A trial in the case against doomsday prophet Chad Daybell.
Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty against him.
Investigators have recovered human remains at Chad Daybell's residence.
No way, Morgan. I should never go in with this.
His wife, Lori Daybell, has already been convicted.
Now, will her husband end up with the same fate?
It's just so hard to know where the truth ends.
It's the doomsday prophet, Chad Daybell, on trial.
I know it's been told for years that Tammy would pass away at a young age. I had no idea that Lori would even be a part of my life. I just knew that my life had two segments, and that I know Tammy's on a special mission, and she's with my kids. She's visited them. There's so much, Melanie, that you just have to have faith, and this is not some sort of master plan. There's no way Lori and I could ever come up with this.
Welcome back. We're getting ready. Chad Daybell's trial begins on Monday right here on Court TV with jury selection, death penalty trial. There will be a camera inside the courtroom, so you're going to get to see it this time, and it's going to be a much different case than Lori Daybell's case. Let's get to the wedding, though. The wedding of Chad and Tammy. Like I said off the top, this should have been a lifelong commitment. And when I mean lifelong commitment, I mean you get to live your entire life. You don't start a life with someone else while your wife is still alive, because that happened here. We have evidence that happened here. But, you know, you meet when you're young, you kind of grow together, you build a family, and then you grow old together. That's the way it is. And you enjoy your grandkids. I mean, that's the way life can be when you choose to take someone as your partner. But they're married in 1990, and then Tammy dies October 19th, 2019. And then 17 days later, November 5th, 2019, this happens. This happens. Everything was picked out for the wedding beforehand, by the way. They've got receipts. And then a month after this wedding, Tammy's body is exhumed in December. And one of the children of that marriage, Chad and Tammy, Emma Murray, spoke with Court TV about her mom being exhumed and the autopsy results. Take a listen.
The Fremont County Sheriff is who I called, and I left a voicemail at their office. I just wanted to know if I could see my mother's autopsy results. I want to see them before they're released to the media. And Sheriff Humphreys returned my call, and he told me that if I work with Fremont County's head detective, I would be able to discuss it with them. But I was also told that he would not even be able to call me back until later the next week. And my brothers and sisters and I have been on pins and needles for over a year waiting to know what this report says. But I was told that the sheriff himself cannot let my mother's own children see an autopsy report until we all meet together with a detective and answer all of their questions. I don't understand why we would have to meet with a detective just to see a report. And it's something so private, personal, and sensitive that this isn't something that we would be going around talking about anyway. I just want to see the autopsy report. This is my mom. I don't think this is common knowledge, but the Fremont County Sheriff's Office reported the exhumation of my mother's body in December 2019, 2 weeks after the fact, through a public press release from the Rexburg Police Department. That's a city in a different county. They did not sit us down or anything and prepare us or let us know what was going on. But we found out that our mother had been exhumed. I didn't even know what that word meant, but she was exhumed, and we had no idea.
Mike King, real tough spot for all of these children. I mean, even if you're an adult child, I've covered, unfortunately, a lot of cases involving accusations of spousal murder. The kids are caught in the middle. And I would say 18 times out of 20, they believe that their parent is not guilty of anything here.
Yeah.
In this, despite the evidence, and here, the timing of everything. I mean, Tammy is dead October 19th, and they're getting married on November 5th.
Yeah, that whole thing, Vinny, is so troubling to those of us on the outside that are not connected by the emotion. And we have to remind ourselves, one of the things we work so hard for in the Attorney General's office is the victim advocacy program statewide that actually represented families during periods of crises like this. But this is a criminal investigation, and they can put across the point that, yeah, we wanted to know what was happening, but they had to have known that something wasn't right when their father goes through this experience. We don't know exactly what the emotional responses were right after Tammy's death or any disconnect, but we are learning through testimony in Lori Daybell's case and trial of comments that were made that, hey, this was predestined. No, that means it was pre-planned. And those kinds of things become really difficult because a family's already lost one parent. They don't want to lose another. And frankly, they love their mom and dad. They love their dad right now, whether he is right now as an accused killer or if he ends up being convicted and is known as a killer. They love their dad, and we got to be kind of sympathetic to that, but we can't be sympathetic to the point that it jeopardizes a criminal investigation.
Now, we don't know if the Daybell children will be standing behind their father when his trial begins on Monday. I think they will be, but back in September of 2021, all 5 of the Daybell children said their father was innocent when they appeared on this episode of 48 Hours on CBS.
Did your father? I can't play 48 Hours, sorry. Did y'all hit that like button for me? Everybody's grandparents in here.
Episode of 48 Hours, Garth Daybell recounted the night in October of 2019 when he discovered his mother, Tammy, unresponsive in her room, halfway between the bed and the floor. Garth Daybell, I just ran over and picked her up and put her back on the bed and said to my dad, I said, I think she's dead. My dad was just pacing back and forth, just saying, why? How could this happen? Pointing at pictures on the wall. She can't be dead. Like, how could this be? What do we do? Again, not easy for the children, and Garth seems to be in the middle of all of this. Let me ask you, Rex, do you think it's possible and that Alex, your nephew, may have entered that home to commit this murder?
You know, the way this story has played out, and when the evidence has come out in court, we've learned to say that anything is possible. There are, just like Chad's children were expressing, it's unthinkable to think people you know and love are involved in something like this, but all evidence to the contrary, you know, and they are. So I think that's entirely possible, just like it's possible that Alex did what he apparently did to the victims and Lori's part in it. And we expect Chad's part to be proven in that also. We don't know that until it happens.
To the victims. Those victims is your family, your niece and your nephew. Can you please not call them victims and call them your family?
But yes, possible, heartbreaking, life disrupting families. Our family, we don't know any of Chad's children, don't know Chad's family, but boy, do our hearts go out to them for the terrible, terrible burden that they're bearing during this.
John DeLynn, the other thing that always gets me in all of this is that after Tammy dies, there's insurance that's collected very quickly. We heard that testimony in the first trial. And they take that cash, and that's when they're down in Hawaii. That's when Nate Eaton from East Idaho News is the one, chasing them down. And
yeah, I remember that.
Because they're hanging.
Yeah, I remember that. Nate Eaton from Idaho and Justin Lum from Phoenix. It was good following them.
Out in Hawaii, in the sun. The kids are buried in the backyard at this time. Tammy is dead, and they've got a bag of money because Tammy's dead.
Yeah, and again, I'll just highlight the fact that the name of the church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the Latter-day means literally that Jesus is coming any moment. If you combine that with the teaching that, God or Jesus can communicate to you through your emotions, and that there's one mighty and strong that's going to be lifted up to prepare for Jesus, maybe Chad gets these emotions. Maybe he's having a midlife crisis. Maybe he is starting to have feelings for Lori and is losing his feelings for his wife. And how's he supposed to discern between his own feelings and emotions in a midlife crisis and him being taught through the church that when the Holy Ghost communicates to you, he communicates through emotions. And maybe those emotions tell him that he's the one mighty and strong and that he's supposed to run off with Lori to usher in the second coming of Jesus. And I think that's very plausible. And that's part of the Legos that I was mentioning that people in these sorts of religions can build to build up their own theologies.
All right, stay where you are, everyone. When we come back, we're going to take a trip to Chad Daybell's backyard. And what a day when we found out they were digging and what they found.
Here's what we can see. There are multiple police officers here. There's at least one canine dog. It looks like there is an area of focus in the backyard. They have set up 3 or 4 blue canopy tents. They have taped off the backyard. And that seems to be the area of focus right now.
We're across the field from Chad Daybell's home, and we're going to zoom way in so that you can kind of see where investigators have been outside all day long. Investigators from the Rexburg Police Department, the Fremont County Sheriff's Office, as well as the FBI Evidence Response Team. Now, Rexburg Police did say they're out here serving the search warrant in relation to the case of JJ and Tylee, the kids missing since September, and they confirm they have found human remains on this property.
Shortly after the remains were discovered, Chad Daybell was taken into custody and booked into the Fremont County Jail.
We noticed they were having a few bonfires that were kind of out of the ordinary. So they had a big bonfire last fall, and they had 2 or 3 big bonfires this spring.
When I returned to that area, they had already dug down and located what appeared to be a mass of burnt flesh and charred bone. The amount of duct tape that was covering the body.
Okay. Where was that duct tape located?
On the head, arms, and feet.
And what happened in that backyard, what was discovered in that backyard is going to be crucial in this trial. Remember, Chad Daybell is charged in connection to the murders of JJ and Tylee, as well as his wife Tammy. Well, wife Tammy, he's there, as she's murdered or dies, depending upon whatever the evidence shows us. But for the 2 children, he's not there when they're murdered, but they're in his backyard, and connecting him there is so crucial in all this. Now, take a look at this very peculiar text message that was sent from Chad to Tammy, September 9th, 2019, 11:53, right? Almost noon. Well, I've had an interesting morning. I felt I should burn all of the limb debris by the fire pit before it got too soaked by the coming storms. While I did so, I spotted a big raccoon along the fence. I hurried and got my gun. He was still walking along. I got close enough that one shot did the trick. He is now in our pet cemetery. Fun times. Well, the pet cemetery is where Tylee was found, burnt. Let's bring back in our guests, Rex Connor, Lori Vallow's uncle, John Delane, host of the Mormon Studies podcast, Mike King, host of Profiling Evil. Mike, this was such a big day in the investigation, but this is a big part of connecting Chad Daybell to Lori's children.
Yeah, there were a couple of really key points that came out of this particular find. Number one is that it helped us understand how important the mobile phone forensics was on this case, because I think they used that to help narrow down and get them to that location. Number two, people are really upset by the fact that he would have the children buried in the backyard. But you think about it, Vinny, it's a way to maintain control of them. And from a very sick perspective, you think about people who are just normal predators. They love the ability to kind of vicariously roll in the dirt and remember the experience. So also having them there close by is a way to kind of look out, and remember this thing that you did, whether he believes it was something that he was supposed to do because his God wanted him to do that, or whether he really had this predatory evil nature about him. And when I say him doing this, it could be through a conspiracy and somebody else was actually the arm of God while he portrays the voice of God. But all of it starts to give us an indication of the behaviors and these little kind of trial balloons that are a way of saying, hey, I did this, but I'm going to do it in a very inconspicuous way. I'm going to make a text that only Lori might understand, but it sends a very clear message that I've accomplished step B in a multi-step process.
Rex, when you think about what happened to JJ and Tylee, how difficult is it for you to come to the realization that it's your niece, your nephew, who, I don't know if it's one or the other or both, took the lives of these two children?
Well, to answer that, let me revisit your question earlier. Is it possible that Alex went in and assisted with the death of Tammy? If anyone can do this, whomever can do this or participate in this or know about it and allow it to happen, people that do that can do anything. That's why I say anything is possible. I can't emotionally spend much time thinking about it. That's the hardest part of this entire scenario, this entire tragedy for me, is thinking who would do this and how can you get to the point to do that? And I've answered that for myself. So more direct answer to your question, Benny, I don't think about it very often. And when I do, it just brings on profound sadness and just facing the reality that that's what happened. And I believe other people were involved. The original indictment that said, talked about Alex, Lori, and Chad, and said any other all the conspirators, both known and unknown. There may be others out there. It's just terrible thinking about it, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. John Delane, I think about the way, like, all of this is being done. We think by, their beliefs or Lori's beliefs or whatever, and then the way that the bodies of these children are disposed of, burnt, put in a pet cemetery, duct taped in plastic, and just thrown in the backyard. And Lori and Chad were living in this house. We're going to live, I don't know if they're moving to Hawaii, they're just going to leave. I just can't believe what you would do to the remains of children in this way, and in somehow, some way, in the name of God.
Yeah, I'm not by any means anti-religion if the religion is teaching peace and kindness and that sort of thing. And if it's not teaching to put your faith in excessively supernatural kind of beliefs. But I've heard it once said that bad people do bad things, good people do good things. It takes religion sometimes to make good people do bad things. And if Chad and Lori believed that an evil spirit could come in and occupy the children's bodies such that the children's spirit went to heaven and they're really not alive anymore. And those bodies are really occupied by satanic spirits. Once you're allowed to believe such kind of insane things, then if you kill that child, you're not really killing the child. The child's spirit has already gone on, and you're doing God and the world a favor by putting that zombie down. And that's why I just really believe it's important not just to focus on the details of the crime or the gore, but on the beliefs that sometimes are what enable this really dark behavior. Is there any indication that Chad had ever done something like this before? Maybe he had, but I don't know of anything. And so we have to ask, what would allow him to do something so horrific? And I would say it's twisted beliefs.
And that brings me to my final question tonight, Mike. Motive, right? When you look at this couple, we talked about it during Lori's trial, and it depends on how you're looking at it. Is it their twisted beliefs? Is it different for Chad than Lori? Is it passion? Is it lust? Is it the money? How do you see this? The bottom line of why this happened?
Vinny, I think you probably said all the reasons that might be involved in this, but what we find is that it really is about power, dominion, and control. And and I've said this before on your show, as you get fuel, gasoline, and fire together, which Lori and Chad were gassed and fire together, you have this explosive thing occur where these two are feeding off of each other. And whether they have some forms of mental illness, or whether it is a power play and a way in which to control other people, or a way to run off and start a brand new life for themselves and get away from everything else they've done, it's really difficult to say. And that's why in these kinds of cases that involve religious ideology and these kinds of decisions that are made where we want to keep focusing on the religion, I keep saying, let's focus on the elements of the crime, the fact that a murder occurred, the fact that the child's body was desecrated and destroyed, and then at the appropriate time, bring in all the crazy belief systems that might have fueled it from the background. But don't lose track of the fact that we got to prove a criminal case here.
Absolutely. And you have elements that you have to prove. You know that very well, Mike. All right. Great job tonight. Really appreciate everyone's time tonight. Rex Connor, it's the Silver Linings Podcast. That's it?
It is.
You got it?
It is.
Mormon Stories Podcast, John.
Well, that's that. I will be here every day of this trial. And I hope you are here with me too. It's going to be a good one. We're going to hear very detailed information of what happened to these kids, and it's going to be horrible, and we've already heard the majority of it, except really what happened to Tammy with Lori's trial, and we have to hear it again. And I feel so bad for Kay and Larry. They have to hear this all over again. All right, guys. Well, I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your Easter. I just wanted to play this before the trial starts tomorrow. I will be here bright and early in the morning, and I hope you are too. Have a wonderful day.